True News on Monday a link to Der Spiegel, a magazine in Germany. It was an article about ISIS. The German magazine was given access to secret papers seized in Syria after the strategic head of ISIS was killed in 2014. The magazine said the documents reveal a sophisticated plan to build an Islamic caliphate that operates like a secret service intelligence agency with surveillance and security departments, prisons and interrogation divisions, weapons and technology experts, and its own Sharia court system. Spiegel said the documents contain details of ISIS espionage and infiltration tactics to covertly gain power and eliminate any opposition in any country they enter. Meanwhile, Iranian Armed Forces Commander Major General Hassan Farouzabadi told reporters on Saturday that U.S. aircraft are transporting weapons, food, and supplies to ISIS-controlled airports to aid the Islamic State. Now, I have maintained for years that Barack Hussein Obama is acting as a foreign agent inside the White House for the purpose of sabotaging America's national security. I believe he's orchestrating a massive infiltration of this country. The evidence to me is overwhelming. His support of the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, the gun-running operation in Benghazi, the infiltration of Muslims into intelligence agencies and the Homeland Security Department, and the deliberate elimination of our southern border and the non-enforcement of our nation's immigration laws, even as reports surface of ISIS camps in Mexico near the Texas border. Retired Admiral James Lyons Jr. is on the telephone to discuss Mr. Obama's destruction of America's national security. Admiral Lyons served as commander of the U.S. Pacific Fleet in the mid-1980s. He also served as the senior U.S. military representative to the United Nations and Deputy Chief of Naval Operations. Presently, Admiral Lyons is the CEO of Lyon Associates. Admiral Lyons, welcome to True News.
Nice to be here, Rick.
First of all, sir, I just want to say thank you for your service to our nation. I appreciate it. Admiral, I've never seen anything like this in my lifetime, where there has been a complete flip inside the U.S. national foreign policy and our national security. We have gone from George Bush fighting Islamic terrorism, and now we're on the side of the Islamic terrorists. How did this happen?
Well, of course, as I've said in a number of times, I never thought in my lifetime I would witness this great country of ours being taken down and withdrawn from our world leadership role by our own administration. But that's regretfully exactly what's happening. And, of course, this goes back to really part of President Obama's Marxist upbringing, where he is of the view that many of the world's problems have been created by America. So in that sense, anything that undermines or undercuts American power and influence is seen as being objectively progressive. And this, one of the things you do when you want to take a country down, the first thing you do is undercut and weaken its military forces. And of course, we've been witnessing that going on now for a number of years, the unilateral disarmament of our military forces. And, sequestration really turned out to be the perfect storm for the Obama administration because it gave them the perfect vehicle for the unilateral disarmament. And compounding all of this is the social engineering that has been forced on our military, which has further complicated matters by destroying unit integrity and cohesiveness, and most importantly, the will to win.
Admiral, the first sign that something was amiss with Barack Obama was April 2009. Shortly after he entered the White House, he went straight to Cairo, Egypt.
Right.
He demanded that
familiar with the 4 June 2009 speech, and he had the outlawed Muslim Brotherhood leadership seated in the front row while he gave that speech. And of course, the telling comment he made in that speech, he really gave the green light to the Arab Spring movement. But he made one other telling comment. He declared that it was part of his responsibility as President of the United States to fight against negative stereotypes of Islam wherever they appear. That said it all. There's nothing in his oath of office about that. And of course, from that, you recall when he went to the UN in 2012, September 2012, and he made another telling statement that the future must not belong to those who slander the Prophet of Islam. Of course, you have to ask yourself, Rick, why does this administration embrace the Muslim Brotherhood? The Muslim Brotherhood creed is to destroy the United States from within by our own miserable hands. It's called the silent jihad. It's to replace our Constitution with the draconian Islamic Sharia law. And your listeners need to understand there's no difference between the Muslim Brotherhood, Al-Qaeda, and ISIS. It's only the methods they use. Their objectives are all the same.
Admiral, I have maintained for years that Barack Obama is a jihadist. He is waging jihad from within inside the government. He is deliberately doing things to undermine the United States, and that is his contribution to jihad.
Well, certainly he's done a lot of questionable things, not the least of which is our open border policy that has let everybody cross that border at will, including Islamist terrorists and the crushing debt that has been forced on future generations of Americans, which all our children and grandchildren are going to have to find a way to cope with. It just makes absolutely no sense to me on some of the things that have been doing. For example, like the Libyan War. The Libyan War never had to happen, Rick. The key thing that happened in the Libyan War, there are two key things happened. One, we switched sides. We went from global war on terrorism to where we were providing arms to Al-Qaeda and Muslim Brotherhood politically controlled militias in Libya. And while all of that was going on, my good friend, retired Rear Admiral Chuck Kubik, who was he's a civil engineering Rear Admiral, but he was doing projects in Libya, and the Gaddafi regime, Gaddafi's key chief of staff reached out to him and asked him to set up communications with General Carter, who was the commander of African Command, because he wanted to set up a truce negotiations. Gaddafi was willing to abdicate. There was no reason for the war. In fact, Gaddafi was doing our job in Libya. He was striking the Al-Qaeda militias. There was no humanitarian crisis. This was all manufactured by Hillary Clinton. It was a lie. And what she did, she went to a meeting with a Muslim Brotherhood representative in the Paris Westin Hotel, and after a 45-minute meeting with them, she had them break off the truce negotiations, which were well underway, and insisted on carrying out this unnecessary war over the advice not only of the Secretary of Defense, but the Joint Chiefs of Staff as well. So really, it's part of her background as a pathological liar, which makes her really unfit for office.
Admiral, is Hillary Clinton an agent of influence for the Muslim Brotherhood?
Well, let's look at her key confidant for the past, 2 decades, Umar Abedin. Umar Abedin is a bona fide Muslim Brotherhood member. And you have to ask yourself, how could she even qualify for security clearance? And for that matter, if the president wasn't the president, he'd have a tough time getting a security clearance under the old rules that we used to use.
Well, I've said many times, Mr. Obama, if nobody knew him, could not get a security clearance to be a janitor in a federal warehouse. Admiral, when former Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann went after Hillary Clinton's Muslim Brotherhood aide,
Abedin,
yes,
right.
A lot of high-ranking Republicans attacked Congresswoman Bachmann and tore her to pieces. Eventually, they drove her out of Congress. This alliance with the Muslim Brotherhood is bipartisan.
Yeah. Well, the problem is the Muslim Brotherhood started their penetration into our government agencies in the late 60s. Today, they have been able to penetrate every one of our national security agencies and our intelligence agencies. Regretfully, they are institutionalized. I mean, it's unbelievable when you look at their creed, as I mentioned, and it's really unconscionable, and it's going to take a determined effort to get out. And they've had great influence on both our international and domestic policy. And let me give you one quick example of their influence on the domestic policy. They were behind purging all our training manuals for our military and law enforcement agencies that removed the true nature of Islam from all the training manuals that we use to educate our military personnel, law enforcement officers on the threat of the enemy threat. And anything that didn't portray Islam as a religion of peace got eliminated. And furthermore, they even demanded the retraining of our trainers, and some of them, it cost their careers, and who were good, loyal Americans carrying out their responsibilities on what we expect of our military personnel. But one thing I want to touch on before we run out of time, Rick, and that's Hillary Clinton's emails. You have to be brain dead to think that they carefully screened those 33,000 emails they destroyed, and there was nothing in them at all related to official State Department business. Further, and that everything was unclassified. That's just pure nonsense. But that misses the key point. When your listeners need to understand that unsecured server was hacked in by Russia, China, Cuba, Iran, North Korea, and every other, including Romania and so forth. They know everything about Hillary Clinton. She's been totally compromised. She is damaged goods. And, the Russians are the best in the world at this. And I'll take you back to Clinton when he was the president, and he had his little affair with Monica. The Russians knew about Monica long before the American public did. And they let Clinton know they knew. And they did it through Strobe Talbot. And at the time, there was about a $3 billion loan that Russia was trying to get out of, I think, the World Bank or IMF. I can't recall which one at this point. That's immaterial. We were against it. And suddenly, we found a reason to support it. Amazing.
Yes, and America's missile technology, satellite technology was transferred to China.
Exactly. Well, that was treasonous. Schwartz and Laurel refixed their intercontinental ballistic missiles so they could target us. And, you know, you have to, let me just tell you, we say they only have like 300 warheads. But let me tell you, China has 3,000 miles of underground reinforced tunnels for their strategic forces. And to think that they've had double-digit military budgets increases over the last 10 or 15 years, and that they didn't improve their strategic forces, you just have to be brain dead. I talked to the former head of the Russian strategic forces, and I asked him how many they estimated the Chinese had. And the Russian told me that they estimated that China had 16 to 1,800 warheads, not the 300 or 400 we keep saying they have. I think the Russian number is the more correct one.
Admiral, you served as Deputy Chief of Naval Operations, Commander of the Pacific Fleet. Why are America's top military officers and high-level patriotic law enforcement and intelligence officials silent while this happens to us?
Well, regretfully, political correctness has infected every major level of command within our military forces today. And, of course, it's really regrettable. It's doing a disservice to the country and, more importantly, to our service members who serve under them. I mean, like the ridiculous restricted rules of engagement we forced our people to fight under in Afghanistan. It caused many thousands of lives that unnecessarily. For example, let me give you one example. If you see somebody implanting an IED and he's walking away, you weren't allowed to fire on him. It makes absolutely no sense. In the same way, when we had that terrible tragedy in Afghanistan where we lost 25 Navy SEALs, the largest number ever lost anywhere in combat, and it was due to the restrictions on not providing close air support because there may have been civilians in the vicinity, so you sacrifice our people. This is pure dereliction of duty. And incidentally, that's what went on in Libya and Benghazi tragedy as well. I've talked to the three CIA guards who were contract guards who came to the attempt to rescue Ambassador Stevens and the people in our special mission compound. They were told not once but 3 times to stand down in one form or the other. They also told me that they knew there were 2 F-16 aircraft, a detachment of F-16s at Suda Bay Creek, which was only 300 miles away from Benghazi, could have easily gotten there within an hour. And I can personally tell you, listeners, that I'm aware of a 130-man Marine Force recon team that was stationed in Sigonella, Sicily, which could have been brought well-led, equipped, and could have gotten to Benghazi within a matter of a couple hours. More importantly, we had both strategic and tactical warning there was going to be an attack on our embassy. Those 3 CIA contractors told me that a week before the attack, they got notified there was going to be an attack on a U.S. facility in Benghazi. They all signed that paper when it came through. And, I've been asked many times, when I was on the Lou Dobbs show, Lou asked me to speculate that what do I think happened? And I said, well, you got to go back and go over a few things. We know also that under the direction of Hillary Clinton, Ambassador Stevens' personal security guards were told to store their weapons in a separate location in that compound. Now, let me tell you, in that environment over there, you don't go to the head without your weapon. And to have them stored in a separate location just makes absolutely no sense. And his repeated requests for increased security guards, which were consistently not only turned down, and further, security personnel, special forces personnel who were in country and who were drawn down by the State Department. So it's really unconscionable what went on. But as I told you, he said, what do you think happened? And I said, well, what I think happened, this is an operation that went terribly wrong. So,
what do you think the operation was?
I thought that, in my view, that Ambassador Stevens was to be kidnapped and held hostage in exchange for the release of the blind sheikh. And you recall when Morsi was president of Egypt, he came to visit Washington that previous summer, and his number one objective was to get the release of the blind sheikh. Nothing else makes sense to me. Why would you kill the goose that laid the golden egg? After all, Stevens was facilitating the transfer of the arms, not only to initially to the Al-Qaeda militias, but then the further transfer to the militias in Syria.
So we've got a gun-running operation with the U.S. ambassador facilitating the movement of weapons to Islamic terrorists that we were killing in the war on terror.
Exactly.
If this doesn't qualify as treasonous behavior, what is the definition of treason?
Look, Rick, everybody should be asking this. Why the massive cover-up? If this was just an operational screw-up, that would come out, and you'd get the mea culpas and all of that. But treasonous offenses were committed, as along with dereliction of duty. That's why this massive cover-up has gone on. You would have affected both the re-election of President Obama and, of course, Hillary's ultimate objective. So,
but the top Republicans
continues to get covered up. We were quite happy when Congressman Gowdy got appointed to chair the special committee to investigate Benghazi. But I got to tell you, excuse me, your listeners, that I'm really concerned with the glacial speed he's proceeding with these hearings, and we've seen none of the key people brought in, put under oath, and forced to testify. I heard one rumor where they said they were going to bring in Hillary and have her testify in private with staff members. This makes absolutely no sense.
Admiral, is Congressman Gowdy being undermined by the Republican leadership?
Well, somebody seems to be exerting a certain amount of pressure on him. And of course, you have the Group of Eight. The Group of Eight, and that's, the Speaker, the Senate Majority Leader, both the House and Senate Intelligence Chairman, they were all briefed on a switch-on side on our global war on terrorism and the transferring of arms to the Al-Qaeda militias. I think that's a factor that's weighing in on what's going on here.
I'm not sure how a somebody of the caliber of a House Speaker or House Intelligence Committee Chairman can sit there and listen to a briefing saying we're going to switch sides. We're going to help Al-Qaeda and ISIS. How do you make that connection in your mind and say, okay, this is normal?
Well, a lot of things have gone on that you can't really rationalize as an American.
One last question.
And the unilateral disarmament of our military forces. I mean, you just have to shake your head and say, this is not the America that I grew up in. This is behind what people need to go back to. 6 days before President Obama took the oath of office, 2009, and he made that declaration, he's going to fundamentally transform America. Well, if you loved America and you believed in our greatness and exceptionalism, what is it you wanted to fundamentally transform if it was not to take it down? I mean, we'd expect our normal leader to build on what's been turned over to him and to build on the greatness and the exceptionalism. My view is he doesn't believe in any of that.
Admiral, my last question, because I know you need to leave. What can we do to stop it before the nation implodes?
Well, I think the key thing is that the key to all this, I believe, is in Benghazi. The offenses, there were impeachable offenses committed. And, of course, Andy McCarthy, he wrote a book last year, Faithless Execution.
Yes.
And he laid out on pages 11 to 26 a synopsis of all the offenses, illegal offenses that President Obama has committed, which justify impeachment proceedings.
But John Boehner's not going to do it.
In clear, unambiguous terms. And I think that plus what we can uncover on Benghazi should put up sufficient roadblocks to get America back on track.
But I really don't think John Boehner's going to act on impeachment.
Well, it sure doesn't look that way, does it?
So
the American people have to speak up. We can't give up. You have to keep the pressure on. Really, we have to reach down and pull up our socks as Americans have always done in the past. And at some point, we're almost going to have to take matters in our own hands to get this thing back on track.
It's getting dangerously...
And certainly the upcoming elections is one of those means for getting this country back on track.
Admiral, we thank you for being here today. My guest, retired Admiral James Lyons, Jr., former commander of the U.S. Pacific Fleet. Thank you, sir.
Nice to be with you, Rick, and your audience. Keep up the good work you're doing, and God bless America.
Reporting the countdown to the second coming of Jesus Christ.